Yo, what's up guys? Old School Dan here, and I got another video full of tremendous value. This is what I do, and I love doing it. We're gonna talk about another way to look even more old school. Now, this is the one that really counts. But before I begin and tell you about what you're gonna learn from this video, I wanna talk about something, and I hope you don't mind if I'm perfectly frank with you. You see, not a lot of people know about this, but one of the ways to looking even more old school is just training old school. That's all you need. You don't need some expensive clothing, Converse, sweatbands, or any of that stuff. You may have known that, or maybe you didn't. But there's one thing for sure, that no one on YouTube is teaching some of the advanced stuff that I'm teaching. Going into the full detail about what you need to exactly be doing to achieve that classic physique. But you know why, right? There could be people making videos just like me. But the thing is, they don't want to give you the secret sauce. They don't want you to be more classic than they are. They don't want to be overthrown. They want to keep making money off of you. They want to make sure that your glass is never full. Let me say that again. They want to make sure that your glass is never full. But I'm not like that. I make sure I always over deliver. I make sure that your glass is overflowing with knowledge, because my goal is to help create 1 million classic physiques, and I cannot do it if I'm only leaving your glass half full. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. That is not how you change the world. I'm not trying to create a famine of classic physiques. You see, if I really want to bring back old school bodybuilding, I have to make sure that I always over deliver. I have to make sure that I always over deliver so that your vision with classic physique is motherfucking crystal clear. That is my duty. That is my duty. It is my duty that I create 1 million classic physiques. I have to take a huge amount of action, a huge amount. Not just a little bit like these other guys, making a couple videos there, giving a couple posts there on Instagram, a little bit of advice. You DM them, they give you a basic ass, simple ass, skimpy ass answer on how to do it. Now, I hope I made myself crystal clear. So, with that being said, I'll see you inside the module of how to train old school. First code of conduct: be passionate. Everybody was passionate about what they did back then. They loved bodybuilding. They loved it. It was an uncommon thing to do. People thought if you lifted weights, you were a fag. That's what they thought. If you lifted weights, you were a fag. Gay. That's what they thought. But they didn't care because they were passionate about what they were doing. Be passionate about the beauty that comes from body sculpting, that the weights are your tools, your body is the canvas or the sculpture, and you're just chiseling down every day, or you're slapping some clay on there, and then the other day you're just chiseling it down so that you can get that perfect look, kind of like the statue of David. You have to love this shit. You have to live and breathe it. Don't just be a one-trick pony. Learn to. The thing is, like, a lot of these bodybuilders back then, they were experienced in fitness. Franco Columbu was a boxer before, and then he was a powerlifter. I don't know which way it was, but he was the boxer, the powerlifter, then the bodybuilder. Arnold was the same thing. Arnold was skilled in archery. He was also a powerlifter and then became a bodybuilder. Larry Scott was a gymnast. I mean, they rode bikes. They rode bikes as a cardio fitness. They weren't just a one trick pony. They experienced multiple, like, I would say their portfolio and fitness was very diverse. They did a lot of different things, and I think that is one of the keys to getting to the classic physique. You just have to expand your portfolio and just hit different, notes and keys, and do soccer, do baseball, or just like, stuff like that. It has to be a lifestyle. You can't see it as a chore. It has to be a lifestyle. You have to fall in love with everything about it. Patience. Learn to be patient. Frank Zane talks about that a lot. Before you get to his house so that he can train you, he doesn't give you everything at once. He treats you like the grasshopper. He wants you to learn patience so that in bodybuilding, if you learn patience, you'll develop a better physique because you don't want it just like that. Instant gratification. Seriously, you have to develop a new way of thinking. Not just don't just be some meathead that just wants to get huge in the gym. These guys literally used bodybuilding to propel their success. Look at Arnold. He became the governor of California, famous actor, the most legendary seven-time Mr. Olympia. Franco Columbu went on to become a doctor. He was in movies. Larry Scott went into movies. Steve Reeves was in the movies. I mean, they used it as a mechanism for their success. You see, if you're passionate in something, you don't go out and hate on someone else who's passionate about it too. See, the thing is in the gym, it's all ego. We all look at each other at the gym and it's like I'm better than you. Or you ever go to the gym and it's like you see the same guy all the time and for some reason you just don't like him? See, you can't be like that. They weren't like that back then. Everybody was friendly to each other. The vibe was like totally different. It was like no egos. Everybody was just like there to have a really good time. So I don't want to go on rambling about tons of stuff like giving you life lectures on how you should act, but like just learn to be passionate in this thing and building your physique and just be passionate and learn how to use it in life. So let's move on to the good stuff, the real advanced stuff. All right, so one of the keys to looking more old school is to train old school. See, one of the reason the classic bodybuilders nowadays look so much different from the bodybuilders back then is because I think it has to do a lot with the machines and the drugs. Our machines and our science is much more efficient and correct than it was back then. You see, like back then, they didn't really have these like plate loaded machines or like the rubber plates. Like these, like all the weights were like steel or like, metal, and they just used a lot of barbells, dumbbells, and a couple machines like the cable roll, the lat pull down. But most of it was just free weights, and that plays a big part in building your classic physique. The exercises, I mean, they used a lot of the old school exercises, like the basics, like real basics. Like they didn't have these weird ass exercises that they're creating now. It's like they got tons of weird ones, man. But I personally and a lot of the bodybuilders back then used old school exercises like the behind the neck press, classic exercise. Behind the neck chins. Oh, dude, those were just like everybody did them back then. That was the staple back then. You know, you got to be doing all the old school exercises like the narrow stance squats so you can really emphasize that outer quad, the incline curls, so you can really emphasize the peak, the mass, and the belly of the biceps, for like just like Steve Reeves. The preacher curl. Sometimes you gotta dip the elbows inwards so you can emphasize that outer bicep. That's the way Larry Scott would do them. You gotta really emphasize those exercises so that's what really builds the classic physique. All these weird ass machines and like exercises that the so-called fitness gurus created just kind of like they disorientate the classic physique. They don't make it. They just kind of like make it look all weird. So that's why you really need to focus on the basics, the old school exercises, because I mean it's simple. How did Robbie Robinson and Arnold and Franco Columbu get to look like that? They used the basic exercises like the V-bar pull down, the bend over row, the T-bar row, the incline press, the dumbbell pullover, stuff like that. Like you don't need to go out and do these tricep overhead one arm single extensions or whatever they crazy stuff like crazy exercises that the fitness gurus are teaching and shit. Cool. So I hope you got a clear idea on why you should use more old school exercises compared to the new ones and the new machines that they have out there and shit like that. Gotcha. Let's go on to the next slide. But before we get into the slide, there's one thing I forgot to add in. I was just about to finish the video, but I forgot to add this one in. This is probably one of the most important ones in old school principles, using old school principles, is symmetry, and proportion. That is one of the most important principles when it comes to building a classic physique. Always strive for more symmetry, more proportions, and more lines. That is what I really mean when it comes to using old school principles. Those are probably one of the most important ones, but the next ones up I'm going to talk about are pretty important too. Next up is using old school principles. I mean, they got this new FST7 stuff that's by Rami Hambrod or whatever. That the guy that coaches like Foheath and Jerry Brandina, and that's some good stuff right there. But I prefer to lean back on more of the old school principles because I want an old school physique, and that's what those guys were using back then to make their physique look like that. Like old school principles, kind of like Frank Zane. Frank Zane used a lot of drop sets. He did a lot of drop sets. Vince Gironda talked about never doing more than 12 sets. You need 4 exercises for one muscle to make it grow the fastest. Arthur Jones talked about layoffs and why you should take them, but why you should take a week off from the gym if you want to grow even faster. Like I've only been using old school principles, and it just makes sense to be using old school stuff if I want to look old school. All right, so what you've got to understand is that the new science and the new methods that are coming out nowadays, they're designed to give you results even faster. Like fast. I'm talking about super defined, super dry, super ripped, super big, whatever. Back then, they didn't want to get too big so quick because they understand the beauty behind everything like that. And they weren't ripped that back. They weren't that ripped back then. Like they weren't super dry, super shredded like they are today. And I think that's what kind of that's what separates the real classic physique from the new classic physique. It's these new methods that they're coming out with that just make the physique so refined. You know what I mean? And also like they want their athletes to stay in 100% condition year round. That's almost like impossible. You can't do that. Bill Pearl talked about it. He talked about it with Dave Draper. He was like, I think Dave Draper saw Bill Pearl eating some like fruit or some type of like dairy or like it was like something tasty. Anyways, he was like, hey, like aren't you gonna lose your shape? He's like, yeah, I will, but it's good for you and it tastes good too. It's like, but won't I lose my shape? He's like, well, look, you gotta listen to this. You gotta understand that if you stay in shape your whole entire year, you're gonna get stale, and you're not gonna get any results like that. So it's okay to just, binge a little bit, snack a little bit, put on some size so you can gain more size, and you know what I mean. With that being said, I hope you get a clear idea of why I use a lot of the old school principles in order to look old school because it only makes sense. Now, let's move on to the next slide. I know this one's going to be really controversial, but everybody did it back then. They had their own style of training, but it was all very similar. Back then it was the chest and back, shoulders and arms, and then legs. Everybody did it back then. Arnold, Franco, Rick Drazen. Frank Zane had his own split. He had I think it was the shoulders and triceps, and then it was like chest and I don't know his split. You can look that up, but everybody, I mean, it was pretty much that was the style. That's what everybody was doing. Nowadays, what's different is that we're doing the bro split. We're doing either 2 muscles a week, which is like, the chest, back, shoulder day, leg day, and shit like that. Before they were doing the chest, shoulders, and arms, and chest and back, they were doing the full body routine. Guys like Reg Park. Arnold was actually doing that routine too. Steve Reeves was doing that routine. That is why I follow that routine. I follow the foundation that built bodybuilding today. If I want to logo school, it makes a lot of sense to be doing what they started with. Are you starting to get me? Are you starting to get on track with what I'm saying? I hope it makes a lot of sense to you that if you want to look like they did in the 70s, 60s, or 80s, you have to train. You have to follow everything they did. The routines, the reps, the sets, the passion, the principles, all that stuff in order to look classic. Truly classic. So this video is coming soon to an end, But before we end it, I want to ask you something. Say you have no, not like, just say, let's go back in time. Let's go back to the time when you weren't lifting, and just say you had a vision for wanting to build a classic physique. Don't you think if you would have had these one, two, three, fours, the learn about how to be passionate about bodybuilding, to fall in love with the patience and the body sculpting about it, and also learn to only use the basic exercises like the behind the neck chins, the behind the neck press, all the old school exercises, the staples that Arnold, Franco Columbu, Bill Pearl, Steve Reeves used to build their physique. And also learned about the principles that, guys like Frank Zane, Mike Menser, Arnold, Joe Weider used in order to build their physiques and to refine them. And if you were to follow an old school bodybuilding routine, whatever you think might work for you, could be the full body split, could be the chest and shoulders, could be the Frank Zane, the push pull routine. Don't you think you would have had more of a classic physique than you have right now? Is this making sense to you? Because I hope it is. Seriously, if someone were to ask me in person, how do I build a classic physique? I would simply answer, follow everything. Everything they did. Exercises, sets, reps, machines. I would even watch how they would train. I would see the way Arnold would do the cable rows. He would lean in and then pull his chest and then pull his arc his back, pull it in deeper. I would see the way Larry Scott would do pull downs. He would let it go through his head and then bring it down and then he'll squeeze it. Or the way you would see Arnold doing his lat pull downs and pumping iron. You really have to get into that character, really experience that character so that you can experience it just like they were. That way you can benefit from the same result. Look, I know it may seem crazy, but I guarantee you, if you start thinking this way and really shift your mindset into this way of thinking, all your sets are going to be different. Your whole perception on the classic physique and building it and what you see in the mirror is totally going to be different. All right, so with that being said, those are the four keys, four advanced keys onto building a classic physique. If I were to round it up, or if you were to round it up to anybody else, it would be passionate, use old school exercises, use old school principles. Like use old school principles such as, symmetry, proportions, and to follow old school bodybuilding routines so you can really experience that workout. So let's end the video with like this video right now if it was very insightful, helpful, and it's got you on your way, or any of my videos have got you on the way to building your very own classic physique. Subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Thanks for watching. This is Old School Dan checking out. Peace.